of This Day in Black Baseball History. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me say it one more time. Welcome to tonight's edition. This is the February 2nd, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. This is an ongoing conversation that just never seems to stop. Yeah, I'm just looking here and I came on in June of last year, and that was in my 41st year of being a baseball researcher, and I was just looking at people doing such a horrible job at it. I said, hey, it's time to go live. And usually I didn't want to do that, but now I'm got on here and started talking to you live all the time. And boy, now I kind of look forward to it, and some of you guys are probably looking forward to me coming on every night. So here's the rules that we do. If you come on and you have a question, we always, of course, we look at intelligent questions, but also let us know where you're listening from. That's really important because in 40 some odd years, you can just imagine, I've been all over the country. I've probably been in your hometown. How about this? I might know some history about your hometown. Actually, I'm getting ready to go out. Believe it or not, my next appearance is going to be in Western Kansas, about about almost 4 hours from where I am now. So I'll be sending some updates on that, and when I come back, we'll talk about that as well. So anyway, again, this is Phil Dixon. So without wasting a lot more time, let's go ahead and get right into the historic facts. So let's go to February 2nd, 1899. Boy, we're going back to the 19th century, right? So the Journal Times of Racine, Wisconsin reported that John Brown, the African American player who suited up with the Racine team in 1898, had signed with the Page Finch Giants for the season of 1899. Guys, sometimes you have to be careful what you read because they don't always have the facts right. As a matter of fact, I don't believe there was a Page Finch Giants team in 1899 because they had become the Chicago Columbia Giants. So they moved the whole operation to Chicago, and they took with them the great players that had been the nucleus of the Page Finch Giants. Okay, and they were, of course, the Page Finch Giants was out of Adrian, Michigan. All right, so people like George Johnson, let's see, the catcher, the catcher, you probably heard of him before. A lot of times, since he was in the lineup at the same time as Grant Homer and Johnson, they always put Chappie Johnson, that was his nickname, is Johnson Jr. Okay, so anyway, he was with them. Of course, I just said Grant Homer and Johnson. Charlie Grant was with them. One of my favorites, who I helped to put on the map many years ago, was John Patterson, who was playing at that particular time out of Battle Creek, Michigan. And you probably know that's where you get your cereal from. The Kellogg's were pretty famous up in there, and so was C.W. Post. And I've gone there and visited both of their graves. They're in the cemetery. They're buried in the same cemetery as Sojourner Truth. Yeah, and I've gone to all of those. William Binga was another one. William Binga was a great ball player. He ended up 1906 with the Philadelphia Giants for a minute. Of course, he was with the Cuban X Giants. Harry Buckner, one of the all-time greats. And let's see, who else I want to mention? Of course, they had George Wilson, and they had Joe Cannonball Miller. Man, that's a heck of a name. Boy, you know you're throwing hard when they nickname you Cannonball. All right. So anyway, John Brown did get in a few games with the Columbia Giants, but as the newspaper said, the Page Finch Giants, and that was simply incorrect. So I always like to point those things out. Somebody says, so anyway, if you're joining, let me know where you're joining from, guys. And if you really like what's going on here, don't forget to subscribe, all right? So anyway, let's go to February 2nd, 1914. I had the pleasure of interviewing this guy, Jesse Askew. Askew, Askew, infielder for the Claybrook Tigers and the St. Louis Giants, is born in Starksville, Mississippi. And I don't know if you know who else came from Starksville. Actually, how about this? John Patterson, who I just mentioned was in Battle Creek from Starksville. Also, the legendary James Cool Papa Bell. I remember interviewing both Askew, who lived in St. Louis, and James Cool Papa Bell, who was also living in St. Louis. And we're going back to the 1980s. And of course, I learned a lot about the Claybrook Tigers from Jesse Askew, who was on the team. All right. So let's go to another one here. February 2nd, 1926. behind the 8-point scoring of basketball, baseball center Wu Fang Ward, and a point at the free throw line from guard Hallie Harden. Wilberforce defeated Wilburite College 37-23 on the visitors' court. All right, so you got two baseball players that played in the Negro League, Wu Fang Ward, who was at Wilberforce University, and so was Hallie Harden. And so, man, Wu Fang Ward was one of the greatest all-around athletes that you would ever want to meet, and so was Hallie Harden. I don't know if you knew that, but Hallie Harden played baseball with several teams in the Negro Leagues. Also played football. He was a great quarterback for a long time. And then also you had him playing basketball, which is what he's doing here now. He even tried his hand in boxing, but he wasn't very good. But I will tell you, when I wrote a boxing book, I haven't published it yet, but I used a lot of Hallie Harden's accounts from Los Angeles when he was following fights over at the Olympic auditorium there, which is now a Korean church. If you ever get to Los Angeles, maybe somebody's listening from Los Angeles and who knows about the history of that Olympic auditorium in Los Angeles. The building is still there. And so Hallie Harden was there all the time. They had fights consistently there. And at the time that I was covering them, the big fighter there was a guy by the name of Art Aragon. I don't know if you ever heard of Art Aragon. He was a Mexican American. And if you ever see that movie with Audie Murphy, To Hell and Back, there's a guy who plays a Mexican American in there. That is Art Aragon. Yeah, the legendary fighter, the original golden boy of boxing. So, all right. So, I'm just dropping some knowledge here. So, guys, you better hang on. Maybe you need to get your pencil out. Somebody says, new to the channel, how are you, sir? Hey, I am doing great. Hey, if you really like this kind of information, not only listen to this broadcast, but you can go back. I've probably laid down in the last 6 months over, I think probably like 68 hours or more of information, baseball history that you, and people related to baseball that you typically want to hear about. So yeah, where are you joining from? That's always interesting to me. All right. So, okay. So we talked about Wu Fang Ward. Wu Fang Ward was an all-around athlete, great football player, played in the Negro Leagues, is a baseball player, played basketball, and was a great track man too. So that's Wu Fang Ward. Man, that's a hell of a name. Harry Wu Fang Ward out of Cincinnati, Ohio. And Hallie Harden was born in my state, which was Kansas. He was born in Wichita, Kansas. So these are players I get a chance to talk about all the time and to teach you more history about them. And somewhere downstairs, I have Wu Fang Ward's, I think it's his junior year in college. I have the Wilberforce yearbook. All right. So anyway, okay, let's go to another one. Let's keep this conversation going because I try to get done in 20 minutes. All right. So February 2nd, 1939. The Odessa American newspaper of Texas announced that the Odessa Black Oilers, under the leadership of manager Walter Nash, a 410 batter in 1938, were organizing for 1939. They're getting together for the 1930 season. Now, these are teams that you typically are not hearing about, but they have great history. So in this particular case, the newspaper reported that in 1938, the Odessa Black Oilers had won, actually they played 111 games and won 107 of them, giving them a record of 107 wins and 4 losses for the season. And they played border to border. And of course, they started down in Texas and they ended up actually up in Iowa, in that area, playing in some of the tournaments up there. So, man, have you ever heard of that team? These are teams that you can look up. Somebody says, I'm joining from Naples. Man, from Italy. Wow, you're a long ways away. I know that they're playing baseball in Italy now. So hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more. Maybe you can teach us a little bit about what's going on in Italy. All right. Somebody said, all right, we got somebody, Will, always a great supporter, Will joining from Hackensack, New Jersey. Man. All right. So, hey, Will, we're having a great time here tonight talking about Wu Fang Ward. Just got through talking about Walter Nash. You could listen back in case you missed that broadcast, part of the broadcast. So, all right, let's keep it going. Now, here's another basketball player who is a professional baseball player. So, February 2nd, 1942, center Ted Strong shot 50% from the field and dropped 12 points, and Ziggy Marcel added 6 points as the Harlem Globetrotters drop the Klamath All-Stars by a 39-29 score at the local high school gym before a capacity crowd at Klamath Falls, Oregon. All right, so we got two players there. We got Ted Strong, an outstanding shortstop and outfielder, played for the Chicago American Giants, played for the Indianapolis ABCs and the Kansas City Monarchs, and then also played a little minor league baseball. And then we have Ziggy Marcel, the son of Oliver Marcel, who was quite the athlete as well, playing baseball and basketball. All right. So, man, I like this time of year because it gives me a chance to really reach and show you what some of these other guys are doing and the multi-talented athletes that we have not been talking about. All right. And since this is Black History Month, guys, even though we have Black History 365 days a year, but yeah, for right now, I want you to know about these guys. Okay. So let's go here. We've got February 2nd, 1949. Now remember, we started in 1899. Now we're up to 1949. The New York Yankees signed their first black player, or their first, how about this, their first player of color. And it was Luis Marquez, an outfielder who was under contract with the Baltimore Elite Giants. All right. Luis Marquez. Anybody know much about him, Luis Marquez? He never actually made it to the major leagues, I'm sure, but he was the first one signed by the New York Yankees. How about that? So, but we know that Elston Howard, who came up, formerly a Kansas City Monarch, outfielder and catcher, was the first one to break the color barrier for the New York Yankees, right? I think that was 1950, 54, somewhere in there. So Elston Howard, who would go on in 1964, win the MVP award. Elston Howard, I learned a lot about Elston Howard from a guy by the name of Hank Bauer. We used to talk all the time, and Hank was a member of the Yankees when Elston first arrived there, and man, he had some of the best Elston Howard stories you would ever want to hear. Hank Bauer, man. Hank Bauer was a legend in my book, all right? I learned a lot from him, and man, I miss some of these guys that, man, it was just great having just a little time to actually talk to them. And if you love baseball and you get a chance to sit with people and just, it's almost like you weren't really interviewing, you were just having a conversation. And with Hank, we used to sit in the press box, the open air press box at Royal Stadium. And I remember Dick Hauser, he was the manager of the Royals at the time. He would have some pretty strange moves, I thought. And so I would always ask Hank what he thought about what Dick Hauser was doing. And then I would tell Hank what I would think that I would do. Then Hank would tell me what he would do. And usually I would have to agree with Hank because that guy knew some baseball. All right. Somebody said, I see, I will listen back. All right, then. Thank you, Will. All right, then. Let's go. I've got two more that I want to mention. One guy you're going to know, and this is from February 2nd, 1962. And Jackie Robinson is elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame along with Bob Feller. Yeah, Bob Feller. Matter of fact, I presented at Bob Feller's museum. I'm trying to think. It's right outside Des Moines. I'll call the name of it now. But right now it's closed. After he passed away, they didn't have the funding to keep it going, and it was absorbed by the city. But Van Meter. That's where it was, Van Meter, Iowa. Yeah, so, man, I've been all over the place, guys. I've been from North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Louisiana. I haven't been to Texas in a long time. Guys, if you know somebody in Texas and they want to have an excellent speaker on baseball, man, you got to get me back down to Texas. The last time I spoke in Texas, believe it or not, was 1992, 92 or 93, something like that. But I speak quite a bit, and last year was a pretty exciting year for me presenting, and I'm getting ready to get started with my first presentation this coming week. So, guys, I'll be coming back and telling you a little bit about it when I get back from that presentation, right? I don't always like to say when I'm leaving because I don't always want people to know when I'm not at home. But when I come back, that's when I usually share pictures and things like that from my speaking engagement. So hopefully they've promoted it well on their end. All right. Okay, so that's Jackie Robinson, the first African American baseball player in Cooperstown. Of course, you know who was the second, right? Somebody knows who was the second? I think I mentioned that before. How about Roy Campanella? That sound right? And third, how about Satchel Paige? That sound right too? Okay. And then we had a couple of guys coming in 72. Page was 71. So, yeah, and I did have the pleasure. I think the first Hall of Famer that I ever interviewed had to be either Judy Johnson or Buck Leonard. I interviewed both of them. I just can't remember. Of course, over the years, I've interviewed a number of people who were Hall of Famers. All right. So I'm going to give you one that's a little tricky one here because most people don't know about this guy. But February 2nd, 1958, Johnny Vivens, and you spell his name Vivens, the legendary pitcher of the Browns Tennessee Rats, died in Columbia, Missouri at age 57. Now, Johnny Vivens comes from the same town, which is Glasgow, Missouri, is John Donaldson. He was also a left-handed pitcher, and he was trying to follow in John Donaldson's steps. Of course, John Donaldson, as you know, he struck out over 5,000 men, but Vivens struck out a lot of people too. But his best years were before the Negro League, so he actually never played, with the in the Negro Leagues. So most of his play was outside of the black baseball organized leagues, right? But he was an important person. Of course, he died in Columbia, Missouri, and so I've had a chance to talk about him. I did run into people who actually knew Johnny Vivens. I was speaking in Columbia and ran into people who knew Vivens. He passed in 1958. Now you got to think about this. This guy passed away when I was 2 years old, and here I am 60 years later. I was 66. So what do you say? 68 years later, still talking about it like I knew him, right? Yeah, he was a great player. And man, but these are the kind of guys that I have loved and enjoyed keeping their history alive. Guys, it's just been amazing because, I started out so humbly just collecting baseball cards. And at that particular time, people didn't care about the Negro Leagues. It was something in the past. Man, we're fighting for civil rights, and I come through that era, and I just wanted to do something different to make a difference. And well, the best way I could do that was to tell the story of my people. And so I've been telling that story consistently for over 40 years, guys. And there are other people who tell the story, but hey, I would challenge you. You don't want to get on the same program with me because my knowledge will scare you if you begin to talk about the inside and the actual living of the players, where they come from, and family members, and actually when it comes to touring, I don't think anybody's even come close to my record. From 2014 to 2018, I think it was, I conducted a 200 city tour, and I drove to 200 cities and presented in all of these places with a different presentation every time. And I would keep some of the good parts, but for the most part, it was a custom-made presentation. And there was a couple of guys who wrote about my visit who won. How about this? They won Pulitzer prizes from writing about me coming there and researching and putting the information together in their community. So anyway, in some of those communities, I had a chance to talk about Johnny Vivens. Now, here's my best Johnny Vivens story. I was in a place called Storm Lake, Iowa. I don't know if you ever heard of Storm Lake, Iowa. Storm Lake was actually, okay, you remember the tour when Buddy Holly passed away and everything? So when Buddy Holly passed away, the pilot that was flying them, and he was from Storm Lake, Iowa, and that's where he originated from. And of course, 2 days later, after playing Storm Lake, they passed away because the plane crashed, right? So that's all connected. But anyway, I went to Storm Lake and I was speaking there, and I was doing some research. And one thing I noticed that they had a ghost story there that they would tell every Halloween, and it was about Johnny Vivens and Walter Brown. And it turns out that Vivens had come there and pitched, and Walter Brown was the owner of the Browns Tennessee Rats, and they disappeared. And then someone would come out and say that they would see them like a ghost on the baseball field, and for Johnny Vivens and Walter Brown. Now, what's interesting is they didn't know that I knew anything about either one of those guys till I got there, and I'm hearing them tell the story. Now, this is true. If you don't believe me, you can go dig it up online. It's Storm Lake, Iowa, and look for the ghost story with Walter Brown and Johnny Vivens. And so when I got there, I might have messed up their ghost story because I knew where both of those guys passed away. Walter Brown, actually played cornet, and he was the leader of the band. And the Browns Tennessee Rats had a minstrel show they carried with them, and Brown played trumpet in the minstrel show, or cornet. Cornet, a little shorter version of a trumpet. And I played trumpet, but as a kid I started off on cornet. So anyway, so I know that instrument as well. So anyway, yeah, I got there and they're telling the story, and I said, that's interesting. I said, I know both of these guys. They didn't disappear. I know right where they are, and I know right where they're buried. Walter Brown is actually buried in Kansas City. He passed away in St. Joseph, Missouri, but he is buried in the same cemetery with Quincy Gilmore, the traveling secretary of the Kansas City Monarchs. Hurley McNair is buried there. And so anyway, guys, when you run into a historian that's been around, and like I said, I've been around, man, I can tell you some things. And so that is a true story. They had a ghost story about Walter Brown and Johnny Vivens in Storm Lake, Iowa. And if you ever get up to that part of the country, man, it's really interesting. They have a lake up there that kind of pours into Storm Lake, beautiful lake, Lake Okoboji. And that lake was so beautiful. I told my wife, I say, I got to take you back up there so you can see Lake Okoboji. And then also they have the college there, Buena Vista College in Storm Lake, and the college is all underground. So you walk on this, like it's almost like a big baseball field. Just walk across it, and the college is underground. You don't realize there's a college underneath there. So you just look like you're just walking across the big cow pasture or whatever. But yeah, that's Buena Vista College. So guys, that does it for me. I think I done dropped enough information for you tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Guys, if you really like these kind of conversations, please subscribe. I'm trying to build this network and as quickly as I can. And I'm just having a ball here. So I do want to thank you. Also, Will, thank you for joining again. He said, tell the story. All right, I could tell a story. All right. Hey, I hear about these Negro Leaguers. They're the greatest storyteller. Well, they might be a great storyteller, but I can tell you what, I've got more stories. How about this? And I can tell them too. So, and even the short version, because I'm trying to keep mine under 20 minutes. And since I'm at 23 minutes, I'm past my time, and I know that I've got to go away, but I will be back tomorrow. So this has been the February 2nd, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Of course, this is the second day of Black History Month. So guys, share this broadcast. Some people think that you can talk about Black history in February. Let them know that we're doing this every night. They can come here and hear a conversation about Black history. Maybe we might come down your street to your community sooner or later. You just let me know, and I will probably dig up something that it relates to your community, your city, your state, or something. So thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate you, and I respect you all for being supporters of this broadcast. So just hang in there, and guys, tomorrow I'll be back with some good stuff. So thanks a lot. And hey, Will, it's always good for you to catch me live, and appreciate that. All right, guys. So thank you, and I will see you real soon, and we'll talk baseball again. Now, remember, pitchers and catchers are about to go to spring training, so we're going to be talking about that real soon, too. All right? You have a nice evening. Bye.